Ah, yes. It's that not Friday feeling, but it's that Sunday feeling. Yes, it's the late night, Sunday night, or in the US, it's midday, morning, something like that. Anyway, hello, rest of the world. How you doing? Yes, it's true. We have kidnapped Steve from FrSKY, or should I say FrSKY, but we'll go into that a bit later on. Yes, we kidnapped him and said you must come on the show because we love the radio and we want to know everything about this new radio. It's not such a secret now. Anyway, who's just running the door? I'll just quickly say hello, just a few people. Now, maybe put this straight at the very start. We will do a Q&A later on, so you can save all your questions, write them down, do whatever you want to do, but we'll do it later on because obviously we want to go through a few things and we don't want to keep stopping to answer questions. So Steve is prepared to do a Q&A later on, which is fantastic, and we'll answer all your questions as much as we can. So obviously, usual crew, we've got Barry, we've got Shadow, RC Ops, we've got Jeff in Alabama, Frankie in New York, who else we got running through the door? Dan Van Den, I do apologise if I said that wrong. We got Firefly from New York. Who have we got? We got Shadow Ops there. We got Kevin, evening or hi Kevin, and Gary Webb, and I believe there's more people running through the door, and we'll go through the rest. So, what has produced this show and why we kidnapped Steve? Well, the main reason is because obviously most of you know I use FrSKY radio, my X20 RS. In fact, I've got two, as you've seen. And I did fall into a bit of a problem, and I did actually speak to Steve, and he did help me, and it was all my fault, which we'll go into a bit later on. And also, yes, basically, can't remember the word now, but anyway, there was something I got wrong. But bootloader, that was it. Bootloader begins with a B, not an F, so it's not firmware. We'll go into that a bit later on. Anyway, this man is so intelligent, I swear, I thought I was speaking to the CIA, FBI, because he knew everything. He really did. So I would like you to welcome, and we'll give him a warm welcome anyway, all the way from the USA. They call him FrSKY Steve. Oh, yes.
Oh.
Hello, how you doing, Steve?
Hello,
Thanks for coming on.
Good evening to you.
Good evening to you, Governor. Got me cup of tea here, sunshine.
Tea and crumpet, right?
You drink your coffee, son. I'll drink my tea. Thanks for popping on, Steve. I know that you're a busy man, but I thought it'd be brilliant that it would get you on to talk about the new radio, and obviously get across some bits and pieces, and also we'll ask some questions. Now, before we go into the new radio, because there is still more people running through the door, so we'll let them walk through the door. I'm interested to know. Now, I've always read it as FrSKY, so capital F and a little R, FrSKY. But you're saying it's FrSKY. So why is it pronounced FrSKY?
Okay, that was actually one of the first questions I asked the new owner. Not new owner. When I was new, I asked the owner, the first time I met him, how do you pronounce the name of the company? And he said it was FrSKY. So
wow.
The company came around about 2010, around the same time that Twitter came out. And if you might remember, Twitter was TWTTR. When it first came out.
Yeah.
And so it was an era where people dropped vowels in that company name. So what they did is they got rid of the two E's for FrSKY. And so a lot of people know it as FrSKY. Sometimes I hear FrSKY, but I've been trying to, let people know it is FrSKY as much as possible. So anyways, that's the name of the company. Sometimes I'll call up someplace and it's Steve from FrSKY, and they're like, who? Steve from FrSKY. Oh yeah, hold on a second.
Right. Well, now we know. I just got to stay. It says stay here. Will it restart? What's not restarting? I just want to check before. I mean, that's a fantastic thing. Does can everyone hear and see us? We should be live.
It's thumbs up.
I think Steve can see me. That's all we need to know. Yeah. Okay, I had to close and reopen it. Firefly. Okay. That's yes, we're all good. Okay, thank you, Shadow. That's really interesting. FrSKY. That is so random because everyone I speak to, even at the fly field, say, you use sort of like a FrSKY, and now I can say no, I use a FrSKY. And more people walking through the door. Hi, Daniel. How you doing? Gary. Yes, Gary Webb. How you doing? And he's waving his hands.
I know Gary Webb. Yeah. So.
Yep. Yeah. You'll probably meet so many people on here. I mean, I'm hoping that the word did get spread, and we'll have a few people in here because I know that a lot of the questions that people ask, Steve, are repetitive. Steve could almost like record a conversation, and just sort of like it'd be like press 1 if you can't do this, press 2 if you can't do this, and say the same things. That'd be great. Was it never had a link loss with FrSKY? Yes. No, it's fantastic stuff. I use it. It's all I've got really. Well, I have got a certain other radio here, as Steve does know, but that was for a test. But anyway, we won't mention that radio, will we now? No.
Yeah.
So let's mention a new radio. So I just want to quickly bring up this new radio. If you could, this is the X20 RS, and you also do the R.
Yeah, what's the R stand for?
You tell me.
Okay.
Racing, race. No.
Yeah, I think it was supposed to be revision. So
revision.
Revision. Yeah. So, anyways, people ask if this is the same case as the X20 S. No. And this is a brand new case. And this is an X20 Pro in a plastic case. Actually, we're looking at the R right now. And you can kind of see around the gimbals, there's no silver. If you pull up, I think the red one is the RS, and you can see the silver around there. You can see it clearly there, right?
Mm-hmm.
All right. So there's a difference, and there's quite a bit of a price difference between these two. So we can kind of discuss why the price difference, what you get, what the extra features are. Essentially, so the one thing that people ask about the X20, we'll start with the R. The X20 Pro is, what's that third protocol? So you got 2.4 gigahertz, you got 900 megahertz, and you got 2.4 gigahertz once again. So are these 2.4 gigahertz receivers in there? Yes. Are they the same thing? No. So essentially, if you go back about 25 years ago, when 2.4 gigahertz first came out, the first 2.4 gigahertz radios, this was the bee's knees. I mean, it was amazing technology, because up to this point, we're out here in the United States, we're on 72 megahertz.
Mm-hmm.
And, what would happen is you're out flying, and you would have your flag on your big fishing pole antenna, and you would be on channel 36. And then what would happen is there's another goofball in the pits who also has channel 36, and he just wants to check his servos really quick. So he turns his radio on and starts moving the sticks around to see, if his ailerons are working or if his elevator's working. And meanwhile, your plane's like starting to fall out of the sky, right? Because they're on the same channel.
Yeah.
So when we got to 2.4 gigahertz, it's like, oh my gosh, this is going to change the hobby forever, because no more flags, no more big antennas. This was great. And, you can have all your friends on it. You can bring their friends on it. And about once a year, they have Flight Fest in Ohio, and they'll get 300 people flying at the same time. Most of them are flying 2.4 gigahertz, what we call FSK, floating signal key. And what that is the traditional 2.4 gigahertz. Now, for a long time, we thought 2.4 gigahertz was the end all be all. We're never going to need to approve from this. The problem with 2.4 gigahertz was that a lot of other things are on 2.4 gigahertz, your Wi-Fi network, Bluetooth. And then there's a lot of industrial applications that are on 2.4 gigahertz as well. So you'll end up having things like, oil wells. In fact, Flight Fest, there's an oil well near the Flight Fest festivities. And about once every 10, 20 minutes, there's a little transmitter from one oil well that transmits a signal somewhere else. And what happens is if you fly through that band just as it's going off, your plane goes down because it gets signal swamped. Out here in California, what happens is you're listening to the AM radio, and you might be listening to the Dodgers baseball. And, I don't really listen to sports that much, but if you're listening to it on AM, all of a sudden you're driving through town and you're driving by a big antenna. And for about 10 seconds, you're listening to ranchero music, in Spanish. La música, la música. And you're like, wow, where'd that come from? And then you get away from the antenna, and all of a sudden you get your signal back.
Yeah.
You listen to the Dodger game once again. That's called signal swamping, and that's kind of what happens. There are things out in. I mean, I there was one guy who came up to me. I got his card. I really got to call this guy, but the guy has like a PhD in engineering. He knew exactly what this was about, and he basically said that what they do. Well, I knew this much. What they do is they put what are called like patch antennas, which are these really small antennas that have an intense beam on them. So when you fly through that, that takes your plane down. The other problem is that sometimes these things are made to go from one side of the field to the other, maybe a couple hundred feet. But, they keep the beam keeps going. And so you might be, I don't know, another 500 feet away, and you get the only thing that happens is that beam starts to spread out a little bit more. So it takes your plane out for a larger patch.
Wow.
So he was saying that also the FCC in the United States doesn't usually come around and monitor how much is being put out. So they have some of these situations where they want to go a little bit further. And what they'll do is they'll put the power up beyond the FCC legal limits of, I don't know, half watt, 1 watt, whatever it is for 2.4 gigahertz. And all of a sudden, I mean, no one's really going to say anything about it, but that just makes your life that much more miserable if you try to fly near there. So 2.4 gigahertz, we thought it was going to be the end all be all, that FrSKY was going to be it. And unfortunately, it didn't happen that way. There's what we call pollution of the 2.4 gigahertz band. And a lot of times, the other problem with the 2.4 gigahertz is that when your plane's flying and your transmitter, they have to be kind of on, let me see if I can get myself in the frame here. There you go. They have to be kind of on the same band. When your plane turns, all of a sudden, the one antenna is pointing at the sky, one's pointing at the ground. That's when your signal's the weakest. And especially the lower you go to the ground, tends to be a big problem as well.
Okay.
So what you end up doing is you have 900 megahertz is a shorter wave, but this thing penetrates and it goes forever. It's kind of I don't know. I think it's just a really nice thing if you happen to have your frame rates drop. So the way things work is we transmit. It's not tones or signals or anything else. It's a whole bunch of data, just zeros and ones, an immense amount of data. The amount of data that comes through in a given second is far more than you need to fly. But what happens is every so often we'll send a receipt saying, hey, I sent you 100 frames. How many frames did you actually process? And then it will say 90, 80, 70. So those are the things called valid frame rates, so VFR. Right. On your transmitter, there's telemetry logging you could turn on, and you can go in and throughout the flight, you can see how many valid frame rates you had on 2.4 gigahertz and 900 megahertz if you have Tandem. So then the last protocol was, okay, so we knew that this 900 megahertz was better. This thing was called LoRa, long range. And there's an open source project that started working on the 2.4 gigahertz long range for radio control transmission. The benefit of that one is that it had lower latency, and that was really good for people who fly race squads, because these are small little things. They're going a gazillion miles an hour through all sorts of tricky obstacles, and we don't really get that in the fixed wing community other than maybe indoor, some of the 3D indoor stuff that we do. But when you're talking about 1,000 milliseconds is a second. So we're talking about the difference between 4 milliseconds and 7 milliseconds or 12 milliseconds, whatever it may be. Very small amounts of lag. But what happens is the 2.4 gigahertz LoRa, or long range, has a lower latency, but it takes more energy to get to equivalent levels. So a 25 milliwatt, I mean, I don't know what the exact ones are, but it's quite a bit more power you need to put into the 2.4 gigahertz long range than the 900. So for most general flying, I tell people 900 megahertz is really the right thing to use for their flying.
No, I didn't know that.
Yeah, the 2.4 gigahertz, and there's a benefit. The one big benefit I find for fixed wing flyers, well, there's two. Number one, there's a lot of guys who have these old planes from who are in the people who fly what it's not scale, but the old warbirds.
Yeah.
So a lot of them use these high-tech MG645 servos, and those things tend to not really like the 900 megahertz telemetry from what we have. Now, if you want to use telemetry, if you want to get all the information back from the transmitter, the best thing to do for these kind of situations, if you're using old hardware, is to use the twin protocol or just 2.4 gigahertz FSK, which is our Archer line. So now that I've kind of gone through, we talked about 2.4 gigahertz FSK, 2.4 gigahertz LoRa, and 900 megahertz. Now we'll give you some names that you might be familiar with. ACCST and Archer, those are 2.4 gigahertz FSK. Tandem, 2.4 gigahertz FSK and 900 megahertz LoRa. Twin, 2.4 gigahertz FSK, 2.4 gigahertz LoRa. Like,
Yeah, so my brain's trying to soak this in, Steve, but yeah.
Okay, so that, anyways, those are the big difference between, we have the different transmitters. So we had the one a lot of people here would have the tandem transmitters. That's 2.4 gigahertz FSK at 900 megahertz. Some of us will have the twin transmitter, which is above the 2.4 gigahertz FSK and 2.4 gigahertz LoRa. This transmitter does it all. So that's what the big thing about these new RS transmitters are, is that you can talk to any of the receivers we have.
Oh, wow. So it does everything, doesn't care.
It doesn't, well, yeah, you just have
You
to pick
still
the
have
right
to
protocol.
select it, right? When you're selecting your... Oh, yeah, okay.
Yeah,
But it
and
does
so
it all,
you
basically.
right. Oh, the other thing I was going to mention, the people who really like these LoRa receivers are guys who fly gliders, because their antennas are tiny. On the 900 megahertz, it's that T antenna. It's still kind of large. When you put them in these small gliders, I mean, what they do is the antennas on the 2.4 gigahertz LoRa, the twin antennas look the same as an Archer antenna. So they're basically black. It looks like there's a little bit of fishing wire sticking out.
That's like
That little bit of that's a 900T antenna right there. Yeah, and then do you happen to have? Let me see. Sometimes I have stuff sitting around here.
What do you know? I have stuff.
Oh yeah, here I got one. I just happen to have
information overload. Yeah, I mean, basically, it may be information overload, but because it's on live show, you can go back to it. Because a lot of people, including myself, are not always understanding about the 2.4 gigahertz being effective.
Okay, that's about as technical as we're going to get today. Then, yeah, that's. I just wanted to kind of clarify everything as far as what is this 2.4 gigahertz LoRa, why is it different? And then one of the questions I get is people ask is, well, if somebody takes out 2.4 gigahertz FSK, which is kind of common, want to take out 2.4 gigahertz LoRa? And the answer is it might cut your signal in half. If you cut your signal in half on 2.4 gigahertz FSK, you'll notice it.
Right.
On 2.4 gigahertz LoRa, your chances of you being too far away to even notice it are very slim.
I mean, what sort of distances are we talking about maybe losing it?
See, a lot of that depends on where you're at, and right. There's a lot of different factors that are involved. But essentially, I'd say we've had people. Keep in mind, when you're flying long distance, you have to get altitude, and you have to be somewhere clear. We've had people flying 30, 40, 50, 60 kilometers with these 2.4 and 900.
So, I mean, in the UK, I mean, we're bound by rules, with a 400-foot ceiling height, unless you're at a Pacific field. I mean, the new field, that I'm at is unrestricted height. You're allowed to go as high as you want. And also everything, to abide by your insurances and God knows what else, you have to be line of sight. So obviously line of sight is how good as your eyesight is, really. I mean, so in that respect, you should be comfortable with everything, really, shouldn't you?
Right. Yeah, that's, for people flying line of sight planes, what people want to know. About the only people who really, what I've noticed is when we start talking about line of sight planes, I think that most people, once they start getting like a half kilometer away, it starts to get pretty small, and it's hard to see,
Mm.
depending on the plane you have. The
Well,
other thing
if
that
you've got my eyesight, then it's, the plane's got to be
right,
about here.
then the only thing that really makes a difference is the guys who fly gliders. Some of those guys will fly a mile away and
Yeah,
2,000 feet up.
yeah,
So yeah, when you fly far away, you got to get up higher in altitude as well in order, and you have to have a clear signal. But yeah, for most of the flying that we have and line of sight flying, and then that was one of the questions I get from people from time to time. I have all these power output suggestions, and I've had people tell me, "Well, I could put 500 milliwatts in, so that's the most power I could put. So I don't want to lose my plate, so I'm going to put that in." And I'm like, "That's insane." We have people flying turbine jets all the time on 25 milliwatts.
yeah.
This is line of sight. You're not going to lose your plane.
I
And
think I
then you can
think
have
I think you're only
telemetry.
allowed 25 milliwatts. Sorry, Steve. I think you're in the UK. I mean, Taz is in the chat. He's a FPV guy, and I think you can only go up to 25 milliwatts anyway. I think any higher than that is frowned upon, but I could be wrong. It has been
It's in the
known.
United States. It's 1 watt for 900 megahertz.
Mm,
I looked that one up, but yeah, and there's different rules for different locations, so we don't really talk too much about, and I talk about generalities more than anything else. And I think for most people, what they're looking for is just kind of a nice flying experience somewhere close to they just don't want to lose their plane. I mean, essentially what people want to do is they want to go to the field, they want to go fly, they want to see their friends, they want to have a good time, maybe share some food, have some good laughs, go home
yeah.
and put their planes away.
Damn. Yeah.
Yeah.
You're right. You're right. You don't want to lose the plane. I mean, you do hear these stories sometimes that that from the experienced pilots that I like to call them, bless their hearts. But when they've said
Yeah.
like they've had a plane, it's gone up and then it's carried on going, and that's the last they ever saw of it. So it's great that all this sort of thing that has happened. What FrSKY are doing. So this particular radio, which is the RS, so you've got all the protocols that you want.
Right. And then what you have also on this is that what's different between this? That's one of the questions I got asked a couple times. What's different about this than the S?
Yeah.
Yeah. So the S stands for, even in this situation, stands for those fancy gimbals. Those are 10 ball bearing CNC gimbals. All of our gimbals are Hall sensor.
Mm.
These are 4 ball bearing Hall sensor gimbals, not CNC. But the other thing you get on this is you get the third set of trims. So you have your standard 4 trims that you have in most transmitters. And there's an extra set of trims on, if you look at it carefully, it's on the bottom.
I can see this, yeah, T5 and T6. Is that the ones?
T5, T6, yes.
Yeah.
So those are extras. You can use those for custom trimming. Some people, for example, some people don't want to take their hands off of the right stick in particular, if they're flying with that as their ailerons. And so they feel more comfortable doing all their trimming, on the left stick. So you can set cross trim on our transmitters. You can, for example, turn your throttle stick for a trim stick to something else. You can use that for ailerons if you don't really feel like it. You can do that on any of our transmitters. But you can, for example, you have 3 sets of trims. You can have all of the basic trims that you need right handy and basically what you have is the ability to do that. There's also, when you start to get into some fine tuning, and this is more of kind of advanced user stuff where you start doing things like, today I was playing with differential. And so
Right.
on T5, I could put the differential on there. I could set that, instead of setting a value, I could set that so that the trim would move the differential up and down.
That's really good.
And yeah, so those are the kinds of things you can do with those extra trim switches. And this one has improved as far as the sliders. They're improved. It's more of kind of like the pro sliders, the metal. And the other big thing about this radio is it's about an inch taller.
Yeah.
So this is it looks similar to the X20 S. It looks like the X20 S without grips somewhat, but no, it's not. It's the form factor is different on it. It's completely redesigned radio. And so it's a little bit taller. And that was the one thing people were complaining a lot about I wouldn't say a lot, but when people looked at it, if they said, "I wish it was just a little bit taller," and we had somebody was going to come up with a special set of grips for the X20S where it would take the radio up about an extra inch. I think I saw someone 3D print that at one point. It was kind of a cool idea. But now this has done it, and they just wanted it up a little bit higher. And we've heard from a number of people they wanted about 3/4 of an inch to an inch taller, and so hopefully this is going to feel a little bit more kind of like, hey, this is the radio. I like the feel of it, which is kind of what, to me, it comes down to. It is going to be a look and feel type of thing for a lot of people. How does this feel in your hands? I mean, the X20S, it just feels amazing in your hands. And the X18, which I believe you have, also feels amazing in their hands. So that would be, we're looking at something that until we get hands-on with this transmitter, and there's a show that this weekend in Beijing. Unfortunately, I was not there. Our company is located. Right. It's about 700 kilometers away. They took the bullet train to go to the show, so they're really excited to go on the bullet train.
What was that? Yeah, I'd love to be on it. I mean, okay. What? Before we go into a bit more technical stuff of it, I mean, how long do you think this is going to be before it's in the market in maybe the US, and obviously, on the other side in Europe or whatever else? I mean, what sort of timescale we're looking at?
So the one thing I told the company was, I finally, when the X14 came out, I said, they launched it while I was on vacation last year. Like middle of my Friday afternoon vacation, about ready to come home. All of a sudden, it was just my email starts exploding. What's this radio about? Tell me about it. Text message.
Yeah.
Thank you for doing that, guys. I told them, I said, listen, if you want to come out with transmitters and let them, dangle out there, here we are, here it is, here we're going to have it, and then not have it available for sale for 3 to 6 months or whatever, I'm out. I won't even talk about it. And so I said, for this one, the reason I'm talking about this is I've been told that people will be able to get their hands on it in May. So
okay, that's pretty cool. And that's in the States, or is that in Europe as well?
All over the world. So
wow. That is serious.
Yeah, so this was closer. I mean, it was kind of like they kept doing it. I kept saying, this is really bad. I think the thing that we really learned a lesson from was the X20 HD. So that thing came out. That was vaporware for a solid year. And by the time it came out, most people didn't care anymore. I mean, it was all the rage. It was all the talk. Oh, this is space age. This is wonderful. But, it was a year later before they actually put their hands on it. The other thing this radio has, I should point out, the X20 and the X20S, that was the first tandem radio to come out. And it was kind of, first of all, how right they got it is mind-boggling. So that to me was just kind of like, even to this day, it was a wild guess. Like this is this form factor, this is how it's going to go together. And the original concept of Ethos and everything else, really brilliant. And that's kind of what we have. The management, the CEO is one of the main visionaries of the company, and he just unbelievable. I've had people kind of walk up for him. I'm set up before and like, oh, it's this cheap Chinese radio. I'm sure it's gonna feel like crap, and they're like, oh my god, this is amazing. And they're like really kind of like, wow, how'd you do this? And so this was our best guess. Now what happened after this was we came out with the X18. So that one had internal memory instead of an SD card. That one had the T5 and T6 trim switches. So all in all, it was, it was more closer to what you see now in the Tandem line. The X20 and the X20S were kind of the outliers. So I can understand why they came out with this radio. This radio kind of falls more in line with what's offered in the Tandem line. As far as
this has got an internal memory. You don't have an SD card with this, do you? Is that correct?
You can use an SD card. There's no real advantage to using an SD card. It has 8 gigabytes of internal storage, high speed internal storage.
Yeah.
I've had people try to stick 128 gigabyte cards in here, and I have not seen anyone fill up a 4 gigabyte card. Maybe if you're putting your whole music collection on there, that might be a different story. But no, it's, as far as the general flying stuff, 8 gigabytes is more than enough storage. But if you do want to put your whole music collection on there, you can put that on an micro SD card, stick it in the radio. We don't have a music player yet, but hopefully one of these days we will.
Well, I mean on this one as well. I mean, you've got like the kind of what the black box, so and for logs and bits and pieces. So I mean, would you want to save them to an external, or wouldn't really fill up the internal?
It's not going to fill up the internal. I mean, I have the telemetry logging. I don't record at a really high rate. 1,000 milliseconds is 1 second, so I do 250 millisecond record times, which is 4 times a second. You can turn on 50 milliseconds, which is 20 times a second, and that's a bit too much information unless you're really trying to trace something down. I figure about once every quarter second's plenty.
Okay, that's interesting to know. So I
mean, like 26 files are really tiny by the time you get done with my 25 minute legendary long flights.
Okay, well, I'm okay. So we've established all the sexy stuff. So I mean, the price difference between, say, I mean, the X20 S is still going to be around. Presumably, they're not going to get rid of that, are they?
Are they going to get rid of the X20 S? Okay, that's the question right now, and that's the teasing question I put in there, and I did ask some very specific blunt questions to management as to what is the plan with the X20, the X20S. The X20 is, I don't know what happened with that radio. It might be because I stopped taking it to events and stopped promoting it, and people kept, when you look at them side by side, 8 times out of 10, the people would buy the S. But we were selling still plenty of the X20. And I just said, forget it. I'm not letting people capitulate for 5 minutes in front of me looking at 2 different radios that are almost identical. Let's just take the X20S because this is where they're going to end up anyways. And then the X20 sales just kind of plummeted. So because the X20 sales just aren't really doing that great for like the last year, that's the first one that's going to go away.
See, that's really interesting because obviously you're saying that. Why have they brought like an X20R and an X20 RS then? If they've had that previously, why didn't they just go for like the X20 RS and that was it? Yeah.
Because I think what it is, the X20R is a $500 transmitter, so it's not that much more expensive than the red X20S. $470 versus $500, it's $30, right?
Right.
The RS is $650, so there's $150 difference.
There's a big jump, yeah.
And what do you get for the RS over the R? You get 2 things. First of all is text-to-speech, which works okay, but I'd rather just use... I mean, nowadays you can go online and you can grab... I like my my radios that talk with a British female accent, a young British female accent.
Well, let's not go there, shall we? I prefer the American accent. How strange is that? But yeah, there you go.
Yeah, it just sounds more official, more lovely. But yeah, so I mean, you can pick whatever you feel like, and they have dialects for everybody. So I mean, and I'm talking about things you find online. So it sounds like somebody, if you want to hear a woman with like an Indian accent speaking English, you can get that as well. And so it's a lot. I don't know, a lot more personalization. You type your words in, and the other thing is like you type it in, you can use punctuation so that she can slow her speech down. Landing gear, flaps down, instead of, I think I wanted to say at one point, landing gear down, flaps up, right? So I wanted to have some pauses, and I could do that. I don't know if text-to-speech could do that quite as well.
I don't know.
Yeah, the text-to-speech is one voice. The other thing, and it's also kind of works somewhat well, it works okay, maybe sometimes not. You kind of have to spell words differently to get it to sound the way you want it to. But the big thing is the gimbals. These things are called, like, I guess they call them shaker sticks, and this is something that is from an airplane, actual airplanes. As far as I know,
it's the S, right?
And so the idea is it's a telemetry feedback. Now, an example of a practical telemetry feedback. Let's say that you're absolutely afraid to fly more than 400 feet up. What you could do is you can set up a sensor, so you'd have a variometer, and what you do is you set up a limit. When you get to 400 feet, you would set up a special function where I want you to shake these sticks. So when you get to 400 feet ceiling, all of a sudden, once you get over that, the sticks start vibrating.
I think it'd give me a heart attack if I'm concentrating on the plane. It starts vibrating. It's like, oh my gosh.
Well, the stick vibrating is different than the haptic feedback, where the whole thing vibrates. That's just a little bit, yeah.
That's cool.
Even the haptic feedback on these radios, you can turn them up and down, so you can kind of make them not as jarring.
So what would you say the difference? I mean, how much is the Pro for at the moment?
The Pro is going to be the X20, whatever we're going to call the thing now. We're not exactly in love with any name. It was supposed to be the X20 Pro AW for the next version of it.
That sucks, yeah.
Yeah, they're like, no. And I said, why don't we come out with the X20 Mach 2? Well, there's another company that has a Mark II on the radio, and like we don't want to be associated. People are like, oh, we stole from them. But so they're kind of like, we're playing with that one a little bit, and then we're starting to think about terms like alpha and delta or whatever else. So what it's going to be called, I don't know. But that radio with the shaker sticks on it is going to be $9.95 for just the transmitter and case only.
Wow!
And then the whole, if you want to get the whole combo pack, it's going to be $12.95.
That's a lot of dollar.
Well, yeah. The thing is that this is, I don't know. The guys, you look at that from a, I don't know. It depends on the perspective of who's looking at it. I mean, we've got guys who fly turbine jets, and they're putting together $30,000 turbine jets. So a few $100s one way or the other doesn't really bother them super much. But and then sometimes the glider guys are like that too, and there are some affluents, but what we kind of noticed is that, or what I've noticed around the world, the economy is doing better or worse depending on what countries you're talking to. So one of the reasons why this radio,
the UK's not doing too good at the moment, I don't think, but we won't go into that.
Yeah, I've heard Germany's doing even worse, but yeah.
Just Europe in general, I think. I'm not too sure.
Europe in general, yeah. So, I mean, that's the thing. It's just kind of, it's weird because like 5 or 6 years ago, people, when they're pulling in 15% a year on their portfolio, dropping $3,000 in a transmitter was a no-brainer. I could just do that. I'm making plenty of money. I don't care. I want it. I'm going to get it.
Yeah.
YOLO. But when we look at this now, we're in a different economy where, I'd love to be able to spend $1,000 to $1,300 for a transmitter, but the reality is I don't have that kind of money. $650 is a bit of a stretch, but I can do it. That's what I'm seeing right now.
Yeah, I mean, I'm being swayed by, come May, I'll probably be swayed by this, and obviously maybe sell one of my X20s. But I mean, obviously the with the X20 RS, I mean, they'll still work like with some people like buddy boxing and bits and pieces. They'll still work with each other, won't they?
Yeah, buddy boxing will work. The other thing that works is with all these radios is the model sharing, which is amazing. If you've ever done that before,
yeah. I mean, we had that sent to me the other day, so it's brilliant. There was a question that I wanted that I've actually popped in my mind, which is quite strange because I always forget things. Yeah. Now, let's talk about the X20S. Which obviously I have, and to buddy box them, you use Bluetooth. That's correct, isn't it?
Right. They all use Bluetooth.
Yeah, so why doesn't that affect then the 2.4 gigahertz? Because Bluetooth can affect it.
But it doesn't really affect it.
Right.
I think they're slightly different as far as the frequencies they are, and the 2.4 gigahertz spectrum is actually pretty large. There's a lot of different channels on there.
Right. I mean, I did notice something that when I was training with Paul Heckles, is that he used to go behind me, obviously to see what I'm doing, and as soon as you go behind me, it cuts out, which is like He's like, stop, no, no, come back, come back. But it's still cool. It's better than having a lead and bits and pieces now. Now, I know, I mean, obviously, so is there anything else in the RS that people need to know that obviously is
Well,
apart?
the new thing they have is a larger antenna. The handle's a little bit bigger,
We've
and
seen
so
that. I could put back on the side view. You can just about see it. I think there we can't really, but yeah.
yeah, it's quite a bit. I actually have one buried in the garage somewhere. I can grab it really quick, but the idea is it's a slightly larger handle, and it's not going to give you a better 900 megahertz penetration. We've updated the 2.4 gigahertz. The whole transmit module has been updated, so the 2.4 gigahertz FSK gives a little bit better performance, especially with this new antenna. And so that's one of the other things you're going to get with the new X20 Pro. And I say that with knowing full well that we sold many hundreds of these transmitters, X20 Pros, to people, a lot of people I know, a lot of my friends. And I'm telling them two things. First of all, you can pay, it's like around $100, send your transmitter in, and you can get the new transmit module put into your X20 Pro and the new antenna on your X20 Pro. But you aren't really going to notice super much difference between. It's going to be better, but I don't think it's going to be like, oh my gosh, this is night and day better. It's worth it. No, they just improved it a bit, and so I'd say but you're not going to get more range out of your transmitter.
Right.
I was at the field yesterday, and somebody had an X20 Pro, and we were doing a range check, and I'm like all the way down the runway, out in the boonies on range check, and that's 1/30th of the power, and I was still getting really good performance out of that X20 Pro, and it was just sitting there with a bunch of other stuff, a bunch of other people around, and I'm really impressed how well the plane was sitting there. We had it off the ground about 3 or 4 feet, which is the best way to do it. And the range I find to be is just absolutely fantastic for flying. We've had, I can't tell you how many jets flying on these things, the 2.4 gigahertz, 900 megahertz combination,
Right.
tandem combination, flying on turbine jets, things are jets that are more expensive than the car I drive.
I've seen that, yeah.
Yeah, and without a single problem. So this stuff actually works very well, and that's the main thing that I would say is, like, I'm really impressed with the transmit quality of just the X20 Pro. So if they improve that, then that has to be something kind of special.
Well, I mean, yeah, I mean everything that FrSKY, as we call it, FrSKY is the correct name. Everything they do is brilliant anyway. I mean, I think from the last few years, it's just been getting better and better. Now I do know that you like the X14, don't you? And it looks a lovely radio.
I'm actually partial to this one for a couple reasons. The thing that it doesn't come with is it doesn't come in a case. It comes in like plastic clamshell type of thing inside of a box. So that EVA bag that you don't really get with all the transmitters is missing, but should be available. We just haven't seen them in the United States yet. This one, it's like, I don't know. It's better than you would possibly imagine. The downside of this radio is that there's an upside and a downside to it. The downside to me is that it does not have a touchscreen. So you have to get used to moving around inside the Ethos without a touchscreen, or you set up your models in your PC and transferring them over, which you can do. But other than that, it's actually it's a smaller transmitter. The form factor is delightful. And the other thing that has happened is the toggle switch is on the left instead of the right. And why that's kind of important is that there's a lot of guys who started off flying with Spectrum, and that's exactly where the toggle switch is. So it's set up correct for people for Spectrum. So to me, this looks like a very nice, besides, for me, it would be like a vacation transmitter. You go on vacation. My wife always seems to give me just enough space to put like a small Zod drip in the car. you have the same kind of wife, right? Just
Yeah,
kind of
yeah, I
like,
know what you're saying. Yeah, they've got about 6 bags, and then you've got something like, just, that's your space. Yeah, that's fine.
yeah, that's talking to a couple of married guys. Oh, I got the
Huh?
ultimate story about my wife. There was one time I was capitulating buying the Hobby King Tundra, and
Right.
I I had it in my basket for like 6 times, throughout the 3 month period. It was in. I would think about it. Now, finally, I pulled the trigger. Like, not crazy about this color, but I'm just going to get it anyways.
Yeah, yeah.
Pulled the trigger. It was like on a Wednesday evening, and then Saturday morning, my wife sits me down and she says, "We got to talk. I was just out in the garage, and there's just a hell of a lot of planes out there, and you have a problem. We need to talk about this. We need to start getting rid of some planes." And I'm like, I was just getting chewed out by her, right? And I'm like, okay, yes, I understand, yes. And I went outside to put some in the mail. And when I go outside and look some in the mail, I could see the box from Hobby King sitting there next to the front door. And this wasn't like a small box. This thing was like half the
Huge.
size. Yeah, it was huge because they made whatever they packed the plane up, they like put twice as much on there. And I'm like, oh my God, if I bring this thing in the house, I'm dead.
She's gonna go
So
nuts.
yeah, she just finished chewing me out. And here's this thing showing up. And so I picked the box up and I carried it on the front of the house. I go to the side. The plan was to go to the side door of the garage and shove it somewhere in the garage where it just looks like it's part of all the other crap I have out
Yeah,
there,
yeah.
right? And as soon as I put my hand on the door to open the door, I feel it twist. And then she pulls it open and she looks right at me and she looks at the box and they're like, "What the hell is this? We were just talking about this."
Don't. I mean, there's a box here. Oh, I don't want to show because no one knows what it is yet. But there's a box here. I mean, my wife's the same. It's
Yeah,
sort of like, you've got your space. I mean, she's good. Don't get me wrong. She's very
yeah.
supportive. And I came home and I forgot this was coming. And it came home. The box was there, and it was just, all vision, no noise. It's just the look said everything. The look was a
Yeah.
thousand words. It was like,
Another one of
are
these
you for
again.
real? I thought you wasn't
Yeah,
buying any more planes. Are you for real?
yeah.
And it was
I
like,
know.
but I treated her anyway, so it's all good. She's happy bunny.
So
But
back to the
this,
X14. Yeah, what we tend to have is we got a lot of guys who, I think in the first year when you start getting into RC planes, you get your first plane going, and then next thing you know, you end up with 5 more in the next week, right? It's just, I don't know how it is. Well, you can find all that money all of a sudden to start going down to the hobby store and picking up more, or have them mailed in, pick them up off of Amazon, wherever you get your planes from. They just start showing up.
mm,
And this is kind of like the first really good radio because it is a 24 channel transmitter, does use the twin protocol. But what I really like about this radio is that antenna. That thing is huge, and it is going to give you very good 2.4 gigahertz transmission because it goes all the way around 360 degrees.
it's cool. What's the price of these ones, Steve?
You ready for this one? All right, I'm going to talk about it in US dollars.
That's
With the
fine.
battery, it's about $190 for the basic model.
Really?
If you want the S version of it, it's going to be $100 more, about $279. And so, it is a hell of a transmitter for under $300.
That's fantastic. I mean, it reminds me of the old stand that the X9D used to have. And you used to be able to buy some nice chrome ones and all sorts of things to attach.
This is really like the old QX7. That's what it's supposed to be. And
okay, yeah, similar. You can see that, but I love the color. I love the green. I don't know what kind of green that is.
Yeah.
But that's awesome.
I was talking to Andrew Newton, and he was like, we were talking. He's like, "This is the perfect size radio for me because it's just small. It's this form factor I like. I really like that green." And so I'm watching a video the next week of him, and in the middle of the video, he has this radio up really big, and I'm like, I finally had to call him up and say, "Listen, Andrew," I left him a message. Said, "I'm sorry, but there was some idiot who said that Joe Knoll is coming and we need to ship out everything you have. I don't care if it's orders for anywhere else in the world. We need to get as much inventory shipped to the United States immediately because we don't have any time to waste, because we need to have inventory now. And that idiot was me. So when I asked for your green transmitter, they said, my guy in marketing said, yeah, well, we shipped all the transmitters you asked for. Now we don't have any.
No.
Yeah, so it's gonna take him another week or so, but we'll get one for Andrew. Yeah, it was amazing. The stuff we go through. We inventory runs out from time to time, and it's weird. There's times where you walk in. We had 100 X20 Pros, and then 3 weeks later, we had about 90 X20 Pros. And my manager's like, "You sure you know what you're doing? As long as everything's gone by Joe Knoll, I don't care." But these things aren't really moving super fast, and we have a lot of them sitting here, and that's a lot of money. And I'm like, yeah, it'll be okay. All of a sudden, I mean, we had 50, and I'm like, oh, we have plenty for Joe Knoll. We're down now in the low 20s. It's just the way things move. Receivers where I see literally hundreds of a TDR10, 300, and all of a sudden, a week later, they're all gone. So just the stuff, how stuff moves is quite impressive, actually.
So what's in that? So while we got you on here, I'll tell you what. I want to show you one more thing as well. Now, many people that I speak to saying, "Oh yeah, I like the Radio Master," which is fine. Everyone's got their own preference and bits and pieces.
Right.
Because that does everything and everything. But I didn't know this myself until Steve spoke to me. I mean, other people might know it as well, but. You get this, the IRX4 Lite. Now, You plug this in the back of the transmitter, which obviously has got the small bay now from the tandems onwards and stuff.
Right.
And this, I can speak to anything and everything, I believe. Is that correct?
Well, not quite anything and everything. It does speak to DSM, DSM2, DSMX, which is the spectrum. It speaks to FHSS, which was the first one for Futaba. Also, that is the same receivers used in high tech. If you ever had the 2.4 gigahertz high tech.
Nope.
The idea behind this, it's called Multiprotocol, and this was an open source project. And so we don't make this module, even though we do sell it here in the United States.
I think it's Horus.com, is it? I think the actual website.
Yeah, FrSKY, yeah, they sell it as well around the world. And this is the kind of thing that if you have T9 Motorsports, I believe, or what T9 out there, and
in the UK, yeah.
If they don't have it, you might want to mention to them hey, this is something worth getting. They don't. It's not my account, so I can't.
I'm going to speak to them Monday, yeah, because I want one, yeah.
Okay, yeah, this kind of thing that they should have. The idea is you need to run a Lua script for this, and that's you would have to drop it in the scripts folder. So it's the same thing as getting a stabilized receiver in there. You drop these terms sound really scary. A Lua script. It sounds like you're going to be coding in Python for the next 4 hours or something like that, right? It's actually. I think we'll talk about more about this later on. One of the things that I'm pushing for is a Lua script installer in Ethos Suite, because to me, this is the future of RC. And what I had to do right now is, as I talk to people and figure out the hobby, and I really do take my time learning about all the different aspects of the hobby. There's just a lot of guys who want to fly it. They don't, when you talk to guys who fly gliders, they like to program. These are the guys who are into fine tuning, the guys who fly iMac and 3D and all that. They know that the way that they set up their transmitter can make or break how good they do in the competitions. Most guys aren't there. They don't want to mess with it. And we got the formula. I think we started the promise with Ethos Suite, which is you plug it in, and the computer recognizes what's on your radio and fixes whatever's wrong about it. And to me, that's that is brilliant. This is the way the future of RC should be. When it comes to looking at, you kind of want, there's two different sides of the market. There are the guys who are the advanced users, and those guys, they want the the beef, the meat behind this. And then I could tell them, yeah, we had the H7 microcontroller. Ethos was built from the ground up. Things like your logical conditions, those are going to be even more robust than you remember from OpenTX. We have better global variables than OpenTX and EdgeTX and all these other things inside the Ethos. So for you guys, there's plenty to chew on right there. You've got plenty of programming, advanced programming inside of Ethos. But to me, that's 5% of the market. And I think the other side of the market are people who have never seen a zip file before, have no idea what to do with a zip file. And so I'd say that's probably at least 25% of the market, maybe 50% of the market.
Wow.
Just, a bunch of guys who they can handle it, but this isn't really what they want to do. When I was after we were done with the event, I'm in the pits, I'm working with the guys, and I figured out these guys are a bunch of wrenchers. They just like the mechanical aspects of these warbirds. I like taking it apart, like tooling with the motors and stuff like that. This is where they're comfortable. Working with the radios, not such a comfortable thing for them. So this is where they struggle at. So the more we could do to make it less of a struggle, the better off I think we're going to be. And so that's kind of been. And then the other thing is like I started putting videos out as far as training videos, not because I wanted to be famous, just because this was needed and you needed a very simple explanation. And then what I started to do was I would take 5 minutes worth of information and make it about 9 or 10 minutes. So it slowed it down because I knew the people who I was making it for, they had never seen this before. And if you spoke too fast, you would lose them.
Yeah.
And, and so to me, that has always been something where I kind of, this was, and I had a lot of guys come up to me and like, hey, thank you so much for explaining this. And every once in a while I get somebody who will leave a nice, nasty comment. You took 10 minutes to describe something you could explain in 3 minutes. Yeah, I could. It's this, and this. I can do that. Yeah, no problem. And then we'll lose about 80% of the people watching, but yeah.
Well, that's that's the great thing about chapters in YouTube. I think you can never know enough. I started my channel because I couldn't find stuff, and I thought, well, let's put stuff down that may be helping somebody.
So back to the multi-protocol module. This was the thing that unfortunately you have to load a Lua script. You have to compile it. I mean, it's not the end of the world. You have to basically take all this information and put it into a text document, and it's a little bit of work, but it's not impossible. And if push comes to shove, I can just email you the right thing. So it's not.
It's just, not that I want to use other sort of receivers anyway. I'm quite happy with the receivers I've got, but
but there's a lot of guys who will have the fleet of Spectrum receivers in their planes, right? They have the 20, 30 planes and all Spectrum receivers, and they look at our stuff and they're like, oh, I can, I'm going to be much happier with these receivers, but it's going to cost me a hell of a lot of money, and I don't want to have to go out and buy new receivers every 2 months, and especially I can get by with it. And I kind of tell them like, listen, if you got some really expensive planes, something that you might want to get yourself a Tandem receiver. I mean, the 6-channel Tandem receiver is $40. You're not going to. That would be a very good investment. And a lot of times you could take these old receivers out and sell them for $20 without thinking about it.
Yeah, it's just handy because obviously it's for people that don't want to spend any money. Maybe they've got their planes, they've got their they want a new radio, but they don't want any more expense because they haven't got the money, which is fair enough. So it's just great that this thing here, which is quite inexpensive.
Right, it's $40 for this, and then what would happen is you would, over time, I think it makes the transition a little bit more palatable for people. And the other thing is this works on all the newer Spectrum stuff, but some of the older Spectrum stuff, it's a little bit finicky. So every once in a while, you just have to rip the receiver out and put a Tandem or a Archer receiver in, or whichever one you're working with. But for the most part, you can get by with this. And I have friends in my local field that fly with these things all the time. They're perfectly happy with it.
I think it's as I say, I didn't know until the other day. So
Yeah.
there's not
You were
enough out
mentioning
there.
Radio Master. Radio Master put these into their transmitters, but it's the same thing.
Mm. That's what I
And
mean.
so
Radio
you can
Master have
get
got this in their radio, so
right, but what you have on this is Ethos, and I find Ethos to be a lot more easier to program at the field
Ethos.
than
I mean, everyone knows that I'm the guy with the gear and no idea, which is quite right. But it's sort of like I came across Ethos it's to me it's the perfect scenario. It's exactly
yeah,
what you've just said. Is that I've got a plane, I can get that up in the air within a few minutes. No
right,
frills, no spills. It's going to fly. It's going to do everything you want it to. Now, if I want to get sort of like into sort of like differential, or I want to do a bit of mixing, and then it's there for you available to do that and to play with. And I think that's where you guys have got it right, where you've got best of both worlds in one. So the
right,
guy that obviously just wants to get his plane up and fly, he can do that within minutes. Or like you say, I can give him a file to say, well, look, here's my file that's got all the trimmings and all the bits and pieces in it. Go for
yeah.
gold, So I think that's brilliant. And obviously now as well, all your receivers can be over air. Was it 08 over air update? Was it got O? You can update
Oh,
the receivers over air. So
it's called OTA, over the air updates. Yeah,
mm.
and it's like a once a year kind of thing where there's an update for the receivers. This year it's going to be, you might see a new round of updates coming out in June, perhaps. One of the things we're looking at right now is to do for stabilized receivers is to have per channel, you can turn on and off the stabilization. So instead of turning off a bank of channels 1 through 6 or 7 through 11 for stabilization, you could turn off channel 8 if you just want to turn that off, and channel 9, put your flaps on those two channels. So that's
Okay.
going to be an update that's
Yeah,
going to be coming
that's
out.
really interesting. So
Yeah.
we'll go to questions in a minute, but I think we'll probably let's go for the large Steve. You're in the
Okay.
limelight. You're in the spot. Don't worry about
Oh,
that one there. So let's just go. I'm going to fire some random questions to you. So I've got the actual raw
okay.
one up there. So let me just hide that there. Here we go. So yeah, okay. So flyer RC plane. Any chance of an X18 Pro?
Okay, there are a couple guys who've been asking about that one, and one of the things I'm looking at is, so yeah, I think that if it seems like, hey, let's go out and do this right now. Let's make an X18 Pro. Now that we made the X20 Pro, that was some major heavy lifting. The only problem with the X18 Pro is if you look at sales of X18 versus X20, X20 just blows X18 away. So, but people like the form factor. The one thing I would say is what I keep pushing for is, why don't we come out with an what I asked for was an X19, which was an X18 with the X20 screen on it.
Yeah, that would be cool.
That would be cool. So that would be, I'm thinking that, and then you put a metal face on it. Yeah, and I'm starting to see more and more talk about the X18 Pro. So I don't know if we would have to use the same case. A lot of this was the X20 Pro, the back of so we didn't use any plastic up front, but we used the back of the case from our original mold. To get a mold made for these radio transmitter cases are about $50,000 a piece.
Yeah, someone said that. I was blown away by how much a mold costs. So
the X20 Pro was kind of designed to have that use the back of the X20 S and the X20 case on the back of, because it had to be plastic for the radio transmission. You can't have solid metal back there. So yeah, it's something that I will talk to him about. I can't promise that there'll be anything more in the future about it, but it's something I will bring up and mention at least, and see if we can. Then they might. You never know. They might have something interesting to come up with. Here's an idea we can do. More often than not, they're kind of in this mode right now where they're playing with colors quite a bit, and so to make an X18 would be kind of fun. Yeah.
Yeah, there you go. As I would prefer the X18. But
Pro.
if you have got questions for Steve, this is the perfect time to ask him. You'd
Okay.
have to excuse if I've ignored people. I know there's lots of people running through the door, and I do apologise. I'm going to see if I can go back to see if there's. If you want to ask some questions, do it now. Do it now because you know
Yeah,
he's a busy,
a bunch
busy
of
man.
green. Yeah.
So let's go up. Let's go up. Let's go up. Let's go up. It's the trouble. They go by and you miss them, and it's like, oh, that would have been a good question. It's gone.
No, no, I think we're in the side chats, or unless we're on, well,
Yeah, I'm just trying. I'm scrolling up on my little chats. Oh, I can't see them there. If you've got questions, ask them now. Come on, there's about 27 people in the house. You
all right,
must have a
let's
question for Steve. I
type
mean,
them
glad
again.
we've gone
We'll
through.
get to them.
Uh,
Type them again. We'll get to them. We should probably talk about Ethos too. Here's one that popped up.
no. Yeah, I'm popping them up as we speak. So he's
Gary,
lucky.
with Gary, yeah, Gary, I got your message. I'll write you back. All right. So we should talk about Ethos and the whole Ethos update. The NPM relevant. What was that say?
The NPM also relevant for older FrSKY DB, and a lot of bind and fly quads are built in.
Yes, yeah. So you can they run ACCST version 1 on the multi-protocol module. So it will work perfect with that. In fact, that's probably the best way to use NPM. ACCST version 1 is through an NPM module.
There you go. A little thank for Gusto FPV. Steve wanted to say thanks for your help in reflashing those are XSR receivers. XSR.
Love him. Mr. Schaefer's in the house. Fantastic. Thank you.
There you go. There's another comment. If there was an X19, can we get 2 top switches closer to the top side?
Yeah, I would think if we were going to toy with the idea of an X19, I'll throw it out there to ask people what they want to see. And so I was hoping for in the future is we actually come up with some 3D printers are now cheap, and we could probably 3D print an actual prototype of a radio transmitter case and and put some guts inside of it, get the look and feel of it. And I'm hoping take it out to events, have people hold it and give their opinion on it before we actually start putting money into molds and stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, it'd be kind of cool if you sort of someone could have the 3D file or something. I mean, if you remember that the XD9, I don't know where it is now. X9D, is it? XD9, X9D, I think it is. You used to be able to get, you used to be able to get the fascias everywhere, so you could play around with them and do what you wanted with them and drill holes in it. Just, I mean, I remember I sprayed one up blue, I think, so I'm not sure.
Yeah, they had custom cases for those things as well. Yeah, they're pretty interesting.
So that's kind of cool. What about more colors in Ethos GUI? You've got more colors, no?
Well, so that the colors, are you talking about for the
Ethos GUI? Yeah. I mean, on the user interface.
you can in the Ethos GUI, you can go in there and you can custom change the colors around.
Yeah, you could do that. I mean, when you say more colors, in there
it's in the settings. Yeah,
you can put a hex value for. So if you go to a website, hex colors, and choose your color, it gives you a code. And then when you're in Ethos, you put that code in there, and boom, you got that color. If that's what.
You can go. There's a vast array of them. I think one of the bigger things is, can you move Ethos around? Right.
So from plain guy Josh, are there going to be any new radios with the X10 shape? That longer shape is very comfy in the hand compared to the wide fill of the X20s.
The X10 shape. The X20 was supposed to be the X10 shape. It was kind of scaled down a bit. And the X10, I have an X10S. It's a nice transmitter. But yeah, it's I don't think you're going to see a lot of new transmitters from this point on. And the other than what you will see is probably we're going to have limited runs on the R and the RS. You're probably going to have maybe a Kawasaki green, and I was trying to get the right color yellow. I wanted something like a bright yellow, like school kid. Nice. Yeah. So stuff like that. trying to push for those. But I don't really think you're going to be seeing a lot of different radios coming out right now. So as far as going forward in the fixed wing segment.
Okay, so but the color that shows good on light background does not show well on the dark grey. Okay. Well, I think you'll find that in many colours. There was a comment to say, there he is, it's Flyer RC Plane. Yes, but OpenTX is a very colourful GUI.
Oh, yeah, okay. There's a lot that's going to need to be improved, and that probably a good time to talk about Ethos, what we're doing with it right now. You know, why all of a sudden all the points of
Roy. Hi, Roy.
Hey, everybody.
There's the question. Sorry. X20 RS touchscreen in Ethos. Will this ever happen? Probably. Was that a aberrant question? I've converted one. Right.
So he has the X12S, will have a touchscreen. So the idea was that every single radio we had up to this point has its replacement with Ethos. So you have the QX7 was the X14, the X10 was the X20, the X9D is the X18. So it's multiplied by 2 of everything, right? There's no X24. So every once in a while, someone will say, you know, the X12 was just like this amazing radio. And we got to come out with this X24. And right now, I think we're further away from it than we've ever been. So really, it's kind of, it's, you know, and I do want to have something that I almost feel like we flooded the market with way too many radios way too quickly. And so that X24 eventually, and you're not going to see it next year. Maybe 2026, you might see an X24. But it's, we really need to think about what would be the next level up.
The next generation, yeah. I mean, I'm still drooling over the Pro. You know, I really like that radio.
You know, I mean, I think for what we have out right now is good enough for a very long time. So, I mean, it's just, you know, I can imagine going out. It's fun because you go out and there's always something new and different to show off. But at the same time, I'm, you know, what I was a year ago, I was hearing, we're going to come out with all these different receivers and all this different stuff. Now it's all out. And I ask them, what's going on? And they're like, yeah, we're doing stuff. You know, we've got other projects that we're working on in that are corporate projects, and they have industrial contracts and stuff like that. And so you're not really going to see kind of like which is good, because I think what happens is a lot of this stuff takes a while to digest. The X20 Pro seemed like that one was a big hit. That one was scary as hell. Let me tell you.
Really?
There were two things that worked for FrSKY that were scary for me. Number one was I had to talk management into coming out with that red X20S because they didn't think the Cardinal Red would look good on the X20S. And I got them to agree to paint a few shells, and then we'd take it into a repair guys would put together, and I would take it out to events and show it to people and see if they wanted to buy it. That was the original agreement. And I finally said, listen, how about we just put together, make me 10 X20S in Cardinal Red. And if they don't sell, I'll buy them and I'll bury them. And I'll be for embarrassment, right? And then they eventually said, let's see if we can get some orders for it. So within like half a day, we had 63 sold. And that was the start of it. And all of a sudden it took off and it became something that was really good. But I was sweating bullets at first because I knew like if this thing didn't take off, it was going to be that. Then, you know, it'd be kind of like, what the hell are you thinking? Then the other one was the X20 Pro. And this was something that was actually brought up from one of our customers, Mike Lynn from Global Jets. He came up with the idea of the X20 Pro. And it was something from the time he talked about it to the time we actually had it in our hands was 11 months.
Wow.
It might have been 10 months. Yeah. And that one, this was something so far outside of where the company has gone to traditionally, because they always thought like, you know, we came out of the quad market for the most part. That's where we had our come up in years. And so when I was saying we need $1,000 transmitter, they're like, we're FrSKY. We make $500-600 transmitters at most, right? We don't.
Yeah.
This is not our market, and so I'm like, yeah, but this could sell. You make something quality, people will buy it, and that concept kind of I had to reinforce to them, and they were like, we didn't know until, I mean, it took longer to put together. It slowed down the development of Ethos. There was just a lot of things about it. It was a much bigger project. And even for about 3 weeks after it was introduced, we didn't know if it was going to be, people were actually going to buy this thing or not. I mean, there was a waiting list, but you never know. It's just after the first wave, are people going to still want this radio, or is this going to be a paperweight in 3 months? So that was some scary times, and it wasn't for about a month before we could actually say, yeah, this is actually a pretty good idea. So,
it's brilliant. I mean, everything that seems to be coming out of FrSKY at the moment is pretty awesome. I mean, have you got any sort of new receivers that are on the horizon as well?
There's one that's going to be a first 24 channel triple, so it's going to work with all 3 bands. So it's about the both the LoRa long range transmit protocols, so 2.4 gigahertz, 900 megahertz LoRa, and then it will have 2.4 gigahertz FSK. So all 3 of them will work with this receiver in 24 channels. It's designed for people who fly turbine jets primarily.
That sounds cool. Gary Webb's just saying, I can't imagine what $1,000 FrSKY trains would look like.
Oh, that's the X20 Pro.
That's the X20 Pro.
Yeah.
Go and Google X20 Pro and you'll see what one looks like.
Yeah. We can send me, Gary.
X20 RS avocado. Yes, very nice.
So we should switch gears here and see if we could talk about Ethos for a minute and kind of like, what's this about? Why are people... what I'm hearing from quite a bit of people, that there's a bit of the chatter going around as far as, well, not really chatter. I mean, I could look at both sides. The one side is if you have a transmitter and it works fine and you're happy with the way Ethos works, why change? If you're running 1.4.17, you could set out the whole Ethos development cycle for 1.5 until next. You can do it until next about October, I would say. Just kind of like let it roll and let everyone else deal with it. What happened was, I don't think that I actually got one of the first transmitters. It was an X20 S. Actually, it's an X20 non-S, but it had the S gimbals on it. So this was before the S even came out, right? And it was, I remember the first version of Ethos and kind of like, I thought it was weird. It was hard to update. And I basically got it. I played for a few minutes. And I'm like, this thing's weird. And I just put it away. And I knew Darren Lyons, which is Falling with Style, Mr. D. And I was telling him, like, I don't know, I got that transmitter. I just think it's strange. And he's like, have you updated it? And I'm like, no. He goes, oh, it's a lot better when you update it. And so we got that. The problem with Ethos was that it was like a work in progress. And to me, where Ethos should have been from the moment it was introduced is where Ethos 1.5 is going to be at here by October. That should be like the starting point for Ethos. And the reason I say that, there was things missing in the original Ethos. It didn't have the logical, I think it had, logical conditions came along not too much later, but it was the global variables is the one that just came out recently. That was in Ethos 1.5X. But there were just a lot of things in there. And then the whole thing that we look at is that our standard was OpenTX, because we actually paid for the development of OpenTX for about 5 years. They call it an open source project, but in reality, we kind of funded the whole thing for a number of years. So it was very much, privately funded type of open source project, which you don't too often these days. And I don't know. Ethos was the things we're missing: insta trims and ability to look at your flight logs and stuff like that. And the big thing that people still to this day we don't have is called the Ethos simulator built into Ethos Suite. So you can sit there and you can design your model and you can push a button and it goes to your transmitter and everything's fine. So that is what's missing, and we are working on it. The other thing that I pointed out a while back was, people don't want to go searching on a website, going through the maze of stuff to go find the download button so they can get their damn firmware. This should be part of Ethos Suite for your receivers. And then eventually what I like to see is next time you fire up your receiver, it'd say, you know what? Your receiver firmware is out of date. I have the latest copy. Would you like me to update it? Yes. Boom. And then it's done. That's kind of what we're looking for. Yeah.
Well, it's pretty close at the moment. I mean, I had a slight issue with the radio, and I thought I bricked it, which obviously there is no such word for, but you can't brick a FrSKY radio. But is that, if you are going to update your bits and pieces, make sure that you update to the latest Ethos. You can go to the Ethos website
Suite, right? It's 1.5.4 is the latest Ethos Suite,
which was a big change from what I had, wasn't it? It was mine was quite old, really.
Right. So the whole thing about Ethos 1.5 is it's kind of like on a different plane altogether, and all of a sudden you have to have your internal firmware working properly. You have to have your receivers up to date and everything else like that. The point is that 2 years from now, we're going to be beyond all this. Everyone will be on Ethos 1.5x or higher, and this will be forgotten. And they're just having a great time with their transmitters. And that is what I'm looking at, is in the big picture, where I'd like to be at, is that because what I think is the ground level for Ethos is 1.5. What you're playing with 1.4.17 is subpar Ethos. I hate to say it, but that's just the way it is.
There's a dramatic difference with the new Ethos, but I was quite surprised that Ethos itself doesn't look at itself and say, "Well, hey, there's a higher version. Would you like to download it?" It doesn't say that. I don't believe, does it?
Well, yeah. What happened? The big thing about that 1.5.4 that you have, if you had loaded that first, the Ethos Suite 1.5.4, first thing it does is it updates your bootloader.
Yeah.
Before it does anything, it would have fixed your problem immediately.
Yeah.
So you would have been out of the weeds. And the thing is that when you try to do it manually, then what happens? You end up grabbing the wrong firmware files or whatever else. Don't know where to look for them. Yeah. So these are the things where Ethos Suite, what I'm seeing now, 1.5.4, what I did was one of my customers asked for a black X18S. And I'm like, my gosh, we have those. But they were from like the original batch, and we had like 5 of them still in the warehouse, new in boxes. And I pulled it out, and this was like version 1 of the X18S. So this is going back like over 2 years ago. And I'm looking at it, I'm like, this is the oldest version of Ethos I've seen in over a year. I wonder if I can update it with 1.5. The thing I had was the repair guys downstairs.
Thanks for popping in, mate. Go on, carry on. He's got to go. He's got to go to work, which I do as well in the morning. But anyway, carry on. Sorry, Steve.
Yeah. So the 1.5.4 Ethos, I wanted to see. This thing was so old that I hadn't seen a radio this old in such a long time, right? I plugged it in and say, give it your best shot. See if you can update from way back. We haven't sold a radio like this in at least a year and a half. Let's see if you can get it up to 1.5.4 without any major hiccups. Son of a bitch, it did it.
Yeah, brilliant.
Yeah. So
it is good. The second radio I put on, bang, bish, it done, and then obviously I copied all over the awesome files with all the planes and stuff in it.
The thing about 1.5 so we're on 1.5.6, and eventually it'll be 1.5.8. We're going to keep going up and up in the numbers. And a lot of people have not seen this kind of update cycle before, where it's essentially what's happened is we're releasing it in dribs and drabs. So the reason you're not getting all of Ethos 1.5 all at once. Perfect example. You're not getting Ethos. We do not have the Lewis right now. We still have to use Lewis scripts for working with the stabilization receivers. Eventually, that's going to be built into the device config, so you won't need the Lewis scripts anymore. So that one is still a few months away before that happens. So there's going to be a number of updates that are going to happen in the next few months. But reality is, once you get past this level where you have 1.5 something or other working on your transmitter, the rest of them are just simple little updates, and they take matter of a minute or two when it's done. And then
There's a question here for you, Steve. It's from Jagman.
I compared the X20 with the X20 RS using Photoshop. What's he saying? Doesn't I can't quite read all that.
It says picture overlay. It doesn't seem longer at all. Seems like the stubby length as an X20 S. So they're saying in the body. Presumably the body doesn't seem bigger from the X20 RS from the X20 S. It's bigger by about an inch, I think. Don't go by what my pictures are. These are the very first pictures they're out. They're probably not that correct.
Yeah, this is what I'm being told, and that's the whole thing. I need to we will get it out. We'll put it up there. And there are sometimes where I hear something from the company, I go out and say it. Oh, I heard this, and then well, that's not exactly the case. And so every once in a while I end up with egg in my face. But I don't know. This one was pointed out a couple times to me. Like, this is a new case. This was a new mold, and we did this, and I think it is a little bit taller.
Yeah, I think just wait until there's more official. I mean, and this radio was only released this weekend, just gone. It's shown in Beijing. So
right, and it's going to be a touch and feel. I think for a lot of guys, though, what might happen is they might look at the radio and they say, "Listen, I just fly with the Tandem or receivers, anyways. Don't need T5, don't need T6. I'm getting along perfectly fine with micro SD card." Which is the other thing my message to people was, when we come out with stuff, I mean, it's cool to be the first guy to show up at the field with stuff. However, what I've seen, there's a lot of people who are transitioning into FrSKY, especially right now. So this might be a good thing for them as far as the first radio is concerned, because they don't have any FrSKY.
Yeah.
But before I would start putting your stuff up for sale on eBay, I would just maybe take a look, take a chill pill, relax a little bit, see what comes out, and maybe you just see, I think it's going to be a touch and feel thing. I think it's going to come down to you getting your hands on it. And that's the reason why I travel the United States, is to get people hands on with the transmitters. And that's so they at least know about it. And I do know, for me personally, when I look at this, the X20S, it's a workhorse. It does everything I need it to do. I get a hell of a deal on a new RS if I wanted one. I look at it and there's the color's nice. It's a little bit nicer, but there's nothing there that I'm going, oh, okay, what do I do? The first thing I'm going to do is get rid of my X20S.
Yeah.
Or my X20.
I like the X20S. I mean, I like the feel of it. I've got kind of small hands, but it just feels nice. I mean, I think Flyer RC Plane was saying about the switches. They were too far away for him and bits and pieces. But I don't know. I haven't used billions of radios and stuff, but I find it does everything I need it to do, and it just feels good in the hand. It becomes almost. It's because it's very light as well. So I fly without a lanyard. That's the way I've been taught.
Right. Same here. But I've kind of also noticed that I've flown with the X18 before versus the X20, and it's strange. Once I fly, my 100% concentration is on the plane. I'm not really thinking about the radio so much.
Yeah, exactly.
So afterwards, I kind of oh yeah, that was a different transmitter. Yeah, because I don't look at the screen or anything else when I fly, other than look at the time, how much time I have left. And I don't know. It's the X18, the X20, whatever it is, I get used to it. So At first the X20 felt a little bit weird when I remember when I first started flying with it. The thing was the weirdest of all was there's no antennas anywhere on it, and that was kind of like, it's just a transmitter. Okay, this is different. We'll see how this works, and it works great. And so then after a while, it's just kind of like I got used to it, and I tried the X18, and it wasn't like, oh my gosh, this is night and day. I have big hands though. It just kind of, so it wasn't any better for me from the X18. So it's just kind of, and then the X14 does feel a little bit different, and that's the thing when I actually put it in people's hands and say, no, really give it a feel. People are like, yeah, this is actually feels pretty nice.
Yeah, I think, I mean, you can make them pretty as you like, but until you actually hold it in your hand and think, yeah, I can deal with this, I can do this, and I totally agree with that. So I mean, the RS does sound, obviously, it's almost like a niche, really. I mean, I think the RS would be for glider pilots, especially that want to do sort of like different protocols and stuff, maybe.
Right. You can also put there's a module that fits on your back of your X18 or any of the light bay tandem transmitters where you can put a twin protocol in the back of that, and you get up to a half watt from that. So a lot of the glider guys are using the X18 if they wanted that, or the X20, and they're putting these transmit modules on, and they're getting excessively high amounts of power, and they can fly as far as they want to with it.
Okay, and there's a couple of people just going, if you've got to go, thanks for popping by. It's just little one that says it seems like FrSKY is trying to compete with Jetty with all the new features in their radios. If FrSKY came out with a general Jetty shaped radio, that would be awesome. And then obviously Del Brown says that FrSKY surpassed Jetty. Yeah, I think so. I think I think when you come up to the X20, I think that surpassed Jetty.
I think Jetty is like our best competition as far as, that is, it's kind of like was the gold standard when we were first showing up to we go to these flying events, the guys flying the turbine jets. I remember the first time they would kind of like the first time I set up the FrSKY table and I had the X18, the X20, and that was it. They'd walk by and like, oh, look, what kind of cheap Chinese stuff do you got today? Oh, looking at this. And that was, and I would talk to them about it. And then after a while, I started snapping back at these guys and said, you know what? You can have 900 megahertz on your Jetty. Do you have any 900 megahertz receivers on your Jetty? No, I got dual receivers, dual 2.4 gigahertz receivers. Yeah. Okay. What happens if you go into failsafe with those? Well, and then the conversation, if you have a 900 megahertz receiver on Jetty, you can go into failsafe, and if the 900 megahertz receiver is there, it's going to save your skin.
Yeah, especially if you've got an expensive plane. Alex has come up with a question. Do you think in the future you will look to try and give the same level of promotion in the UK market as what you do in the US, in Europe, etc.? Representation of large European shows such as Prowing. I can never say that word. Prowing.
Yeah. All right. So that's the $1 million question, which is, how can I gotta approach this delicately? The United States I think we opened up the North American market primarily because the owners wanted to live in the United States, at least have a house in the United States, which they do have out here, not too far from where I live. But the representation thing was kind of a bit of, this was something that it's still right now, we're starting to figure things out. Like, for example, what happens is people have comfort in talking with me because I understand what they're talking about. As far as I understand, when they talk about the transmitters, they talk about their planes. And you can have a bunch of very nice people who do an exceptionally nice job, but if you don't understand planes, you're not really providing a lot of value. And people kind of have to understand where you're coming from. So, yeah, I do realistically see that we are going to need to start moving representation into other markets, as far as places like Europe, and as far as somewhat in places like the Middle East, and even in China. The China market is actually growing by leaps and bounds in RC,
Yeah, I
which I
didn't
was
know that.
surprised to learn. Yeah, it doesn't take very many people, a small percentage of a Chinese market for the hobby to explode, because it's still not a very big hobby. When you compare in the United States the number of people who fly RC planes versus the number of people at golf is like 100 times larger. There's 12% of Americans golf, and I think it was 5 out of 10,000 people fly RC planes. I have an AMA membership.
Cool. Well, I mean, sort of like Europe, especially the UK, always seem to be the last to get things and to see things, and even sort of like, you know, for the shows and stuff. You know, there's not that here, but I mean, especially Europe. I mean, in Spain, you know, I mean, in Spain there's hotels you can go to that are an RC hotel. That you know
Wow.
you can go. Yeah, I'll have to, when I find it, I'll swing it across to you. But you
So
know, I've been trying to persuade the wife to go over. You know, I said, you know, we
let me
can go and do this, but you know, we're going to go to this hotel because I can just go outside and they'll lend you a plane and you can do a bit of flying, and it's pretty cool. So it is sad that, you know, we're not getting that much love from you guys, really. But it'd be nice if you
well,
can look at that.
we're we're trying to. The one thing we're looking at is, like, for example, I started my own version of the team pilots in the United States. So we added Juan Sanchez Garcia. We're about to add a second guy and a third guy not too far after that. And so, you know, we have these things called field representatives, which are guys who, I was talking to one this morning, Pat Mullen. He's out of Wisconsin, and I think he's probably watching this right now. And he's the go-to guide as far as FrSKY at his local field. He understands all of it. He speaks it very well. And there's a number of these guys around the United States, and when I find them, I make them field representatives, and they give them a special shirt and a special title, and they can talk to us, and we kind of fill them in. I want to extend that program, but I think what's going to need to happen is probably start expanding this into different markets, like inside the UK, in places like Spain and Italy, and all over Europe as well. And so I think the demand is there. So in the meantime, before we actually move into the next phase, which is to actually have paid employees, in those different markets, and which I do think is there. Some of the things we're working on, I think that there's going to be a real big need for us to have local representation in these markets.
That'd be great. I mean, you know, sort of a FrSKY doing, you know, even you popping on today is fantastic. You know, it's great that the amount of help, and I know you can in the UK is T9 Hobby Sport. I think they're called. You know, you can get good information out of them, but I think, you know, I'm gonna have to sort of like get a bit more clued up on everything that FrSKY do, so I can get myself a T-shirt and stuff to say I'm a representative. I'll be
You
the
get yourself
UK
a field
representative.
representative. Yeah, you go around, and I don't know if you have them there, but every time more than 3 pilots get together, we have the Horizon Hobby guys when their blue shirts show up. And even though the competitors, they're really nice guys, I get to know quite a few of them. And so the Horizon Hobbies, the Spectrum, and everything else, and they're there showing all these different events. Horizon Hobby has been actually really good as far as giving out free donations to, all these different flying events. So I'm pretty impressed with what they're able to do. But they're more of an American entity. I don't think you quite have that kind of representation, and that's why we were trying to have our field representatives, and then we have some other radio brands have the sponsored pilots. And then after a while, when someone said I have this brand, I would ask them, "Are you a sponsored pilot?" And they go, "Yeah." Just kind of like most people don't buy these radios unless they get a discount on them.
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, there's a couple of questions here. We just go through a couple here. It just says, does FrSKY have any plans of selling the Kaven V20 radio themselves in North America? Maybe a CNC aluminium V20.
V2. Okay, so the Kaven radio, if you're familiar with the Kaven brand there in the UK?
Not the radio, but they're Kaven tires.
The Kaven tires. No, the Kaven, they were big in RC as far as planes and helicopters. Huge helicopters back in the 80s.
Right.
So Kaven came to us and they got a special transmitter put together. It's supposed to be like an X20 RS, but it was they paid for their own mold. So it's a really cool looking mold, but it's just 2.4 gigahertz FSK and LoRa. So it's not a true 900. Yeah. And we can get it in the United States if if there's demand for it, but we don't typically. I don't know. I have one dealer that might be interested in it, but the thing is, bringing these radios in, if they sit around for a long time with no real market, then that's a problem. So Kaven, they have a plan. They wanted this radio. They wanted their own Kaven line of receivers and everything else like that. And so it's out now. And in the United States, I have one friend who took on the Kaven line. We were at a show together. A couple weeks ago in Toledo, Ohio, for the Toledo SWAT meet. And he had a lot of these Tandem planes and Kaven planes. He nearly sold out on the Tandem planes. Those things were just like, I can't believe I can get this. Everyone knew what they were. Yeah. And Kaven, I think it was a better plane, but no one's ever seen them before, so there was no demand for them.
Yeah, there's not enough publicity and bits and pieces. And then obviously Gary's saying about Daryl Grosnickel, is it, in his area? Yeah. It's great. So they're saying about the switches. So Flyer RC Plane said I might get an X20 RS and switch the longer two-way switch to the front top and smaller three-way back, so I can reach them. So obviously he's got a problem where he can't reach those switches. So, but yeah, I mean, I presume you can swap them around. It doesn't really matter, does it? So you could probably get some extenders. So, but yeah, I mean, it sounds like sort of FrSKY going the right way. I mean, Ethos is fantastic. It's I think
I think Ethos is going to keep growing over time, and you're going to get more and more capabilities. The thing that I'm going to keep pushing for is to make it as easy as possible, and also I want to be able to do a lot more model sharing as far as Ethos is concerned.
I mean on the Ethos website, they do have models that you can download zip files, don't they?
Right, and I was on and off about trying to make models. I'm going to get back to it again with make some more models to put up on there, which basic, these are just some real basic models for you to fly with, for just so people can get an idea of where the rates go in for aileron and elevator, a few different flight modes, maybe write up a nice document explaining what all these things do and how you can change it. The only problem I have with doing this is it's weird. It's like, it's not like I'm going to take my company time to put this model together. I'll take my personal time, put it together. But as soon as I put it out, I mean, I swear to God, it will be less than a day later. Someone will be like, hey, this model is great, but the switches are all in the wrong spot. I need them over here, here, and here, And so it's just kind of like, and the next guy will say we need switches this way, and this way. So it's going to be pretty much, if I come up with it, here it is. These are the switches.
Yeah, I mean, you're always going to get those guys. It doesn't matter what you do. You're helping someone out, and that they just want that bit extra. But I think
how stupid should you be? This is everyone in the world knows this is where the switches should be.
Yeah, yeah. It's
happen to be the same way I like them.
This is what I have them. You've got to have them this way as well. But it's not that hard to change. If I can understand, someone who's not into programming and bits and pieces might turn around and go, "Oh, this is brilliant," but it would be great if it was that way around, and not know what to do. So
the modes are very easy to change because that changes when you change the flight modes, switches, and everything else changes, including the special functions and everything. So that one's very easy to change around. But when you start moving everything, the flap switches, for example, landing gear switches, you start moving these things all over the place, then it becomes a problem.
Okay, Jeff in Lower Alabama, one of our members, he says, need easy to set flaps, landing gear, throttle cut, and rates. I don't know if that's a question or he's answering to somebody there. I'm not sure, Jeff. Firefly, I've noticed there is only one person publishing on Wiki. need more info posted there and remove some of the old info. We need more people to help with wiki.
That was something FrSKY Ben was talking about just last week. We need a better wiki, and he was kind of pushing it. It's kind of fun, the different cultures, the different aspects of the company. So management came, and the president of the company came one day, and he had it took a few minutes to talk to us. It was right before Chinese New Year's, and so I came up with 3 things that I think we needed to address right away. And then Ben breaks out a list, and an hour and a half later, he's on to point number 37. It's kind of like all the different things.
Yeah.
So I'm like, no, 3 big points. That's all they can really grasp at one time. And so, but the wiki, I'm like, yeah, we really need a better wiki. I agree 100%.
It is good. Well, hopefully they move that. So they've got the question: the haptic in the control sticks, doesn't that interfere with the inputs? So I guess what he's saying, if you're on your sticks and you've got it very finely tuned. I mean, some people don't use a lot of expo, so it's very finely tuned. Does the vibration, obviously, is it going to send it across plus or minus or whatever? I presume that's what he's saying.
I don't know. I think that it's what it feels like when you turn this thing on. It feels like the sticks. It goes, ying, 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 ying. So it's not like the haptic where it's just the whole damn radio starts to vibrate in your hands. It's kind of like a ying, ying. But if you're into very fine controlling, I can see where it would interfere with it. Yeah.
That would be a really good like a mini video to look at the scales, the plus and minus, and then turn that vibration on, just to see if it does affect that. Because I run Expo only because I'm sort of like got club hands.
The whole reason we came up with in the first place is the guys who fly turbine jets. The thing about turbine jets is when they come in for a landing, we're used to gas or electric, where if your landing is not right, you can spool right out of it. What happens with turbine jets, you need about 5 seconds to spool up. So a lot of the times before you can spool up, the plane's on the ground, in pieces, most likely, damaging your landing gear at the very least.
Yeah.
So that's why when you have what they use the pitot tubes, and then what they want to be able to do is figure out what the stall speed is, and then have the sticks vibrate, because it's usually too loud for you to hear your radio inputs, but they can feel it, and then they can pull out of it with plenty of time, knowing that they need to speed up as they're coming down, or they can need to pull out and start back a little further.
Yeah, I mean, if you've got even a bit of expo in there, I don't think that would actually make a difference anyway. But if you ride the lightning and you've got no expo and everything else, then that'd be fine. So what we're saying, one more here, in the difference of the radio performance when using the new Archer Plus receivers in the ACCST mode with my old FrSKY ACCST radio Vs using the original ACCST receiver with the old ACCST radio. So is there a difference basically
between the ACCST version 1 and version 2?
Yeah, I think is there a difference when using the new Archer Plus receivers?
Oh, versus the old ACCST. So supposedly what happened was they've improved the range, because what they're looking for, that when you first turn on the radio, you go into your RF section and there's a bunch of random numbers and letters at the very top. Yep. It says owner registration. So that is what's sent out. That's like the branding of your transmitter onto your receiver. It's like, and then what happens is the newer versions of these Archer Plus receivers actually look for packets floating around that have those signatures on them, and it ignores everything else. And because of that, they're able to get a little bit better performance. What I will say is, this is the whole thing where all of a sudden why I like the X14. Because if you're flying just 2.4 gigahertz, if you're into just the old these X8R receivers, I don't know if you're familiar with those. Yeah. They're from 12 years ago.
I thought I had one here somewhere right to my hand, but no, I think they're the S8R.
X8R.
Yeah, it had the antennas that had like like metal tips on, like black,
Right. Yeah.
whatever. Yeah.
That was the one of the receivers that I don't know. One day my phone started blowing up in like October, September of last year, and it was this guy Jonathan Voigt from Lighter Side RC did a radio comparison and held all these different transmitters and receivers that he tested. And FrSKY, he was getting like 5 kilometers off that X8R, and those things are still for sale. They're like retailing those things for like $33. So.
Yeah.
They're just brilliant little receivers. I mean, they don't do F-bus and all the new cool stuff, but as far as range, those things are amazing. And I'm flying with them in my plane this morning. I love it. But the thing is that antenna on the X14, there's no screen in front of it to protect it. It's kind of like the Tandem it's like 180-degree perspective because the screen blocks half the signal.
Right.
Whereas those things are sitting on top, so you're going to get 360 degrees.
Yeah.
The antenna is unobstructed at the very top of the transmitter. That's another reason why I kind of like that. If you're just working with the older, even with those old X8Rs, it's not like it's going to go further, but if you happen to fly behind you or whatever else, you're going to still get excellent range on those.
Okay.
So
there's another one, quick one here. Is there any new full-size brushless servos coming out in the future?
There's going to be quite a few brushless servos coming out. Well, actually, the full-size servos are brushless, and I think there's going to be some updates on that. More likely what you're going to see are some new cordless servos, which are going to be even less expensive, which are going to have even better performance. Our team pilot, Juan Sanchez Garcia, he's very particular about his servos. And servos for jets versus servos for the planes where you're flying 3D. And he's very particular about for 3D because they have to be absolutely precise. So this new MD servo, which had better specs than Theta, we gave them to him, and I'd tell him, hey, if you like it, put out a video. If you don't like it, don't say anything. It's just video. And he's like, I'm really impressed by these servos. They're great. And fantastic. So they're cheap. Yeah, they're cheaper than Theta. So these cordless servos, you're going to start seeing even more of these cordless servos coming out, and which are even better. The brushless servos, I don't know. I think they're going to keep playing with the formula on the servos because servos to me is kind of like that's the market we really need to get in. And when the first servos came out, the first brushless servos came out, they had problems with the centering, and it was not mechanical. It was more of a firmware that they didn't have figured out.
Okay.
And yeah, but they started to flutter, and like you could sit there and put them on a control surface and push them up and down. All of a sudden, like going back and forth like that. They had problems centering, and I just told management, like, hey, I'm not going to go hand these things out and talk about it anymore until this gets fixed. And they, for like 6 months, I didn't touch it. And then they got it fixed. And yeah, now they're looking more and more like those issues are behind us. But realistically, the whole servo market for us is going to be the one thing that I think you'll see even more stuff coming from FrSKY in the next year, where there's going to be a lot of really cool cordless servos. We have the very first of this called Axe servos, which are essentially our servos without the microcontroller in there. So you're not going to get F-bus. You're not going to have the ability to read the voltage and current and everything else, servos. But a lot of people don't need that. So it's a lower price. It's about a third lower price because it's not in there.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a sucker for telemetry and any piece of information that you can get, and then obviously with the ethos and logging and everything else, if something does happen, you can go back. Now I'm conscious of time, so we're gonna go back to just me and the. Oh, look, I'm bigger again, and you're smaller.
Oh, there we go. Thank you.
Yes, you need a big screen for me.
Yeah.
So yeah, as I say, thanks, Steve, for popping on. I mean, it's been an eye opener for me. I mean, I'm probably going to go back and watch this at some point in the week to.
I'm looking forward to watching it too. I'm always curious to hear what I have to say. Yeah,
it's
I was too bad I was talking to you to listen, but yeah, there's.
No, I mean, the amount of stuff that I've learned from you anyway in the past few days is brilliant, and it needs to be shared. And
Thank
I'm
you.
sure that
Yeah.
I will be sharing on this
It's
channel
great
as
being
well.
here. Yeah.
Oh, bless! Thanks very much. You're a
This
hero.
is it's just kind of like all I'm trying to do is right now I'm not a celebrity, but the company is a celebrity, and I'm just fortunate to be able to represent the products. I really do love them. That's the whole reason I joined FrSKY in the first place. I believed in it. And and I had so much conviction. There's been times where my conviction is stronger than anything else, and that's kind of what at times helped propel the company along in the United States.
See, you shouldn't put yourself down there. I mean, in a lot of people's eyes, I'm sure you are like a rock star. The mate, no, no. I'll tell you what. I'll tell you what I've noticed. Okay, is that you're probably the most busiest man. You're a family man, and you're a busy man. But you still find time to help people. Now, there's
Yeah.
not many
Thanks.
people that, especially with. I'm not going to start, slagging off other companies and bits and pieces, but there's plenty of companies out there that you're lucky if you can get an email from them, and that's after a few weeks. Where obviously you're there on a Facebook, and obviously and you help me in my moment of distress, and
Yeah.
I think it just shows that sort of mentality. And even with the Ethos, you can get all like the updates on Ethos if you want to join the GitHub and bits and pieces. Even
I,
there, and I
I
see all the emails come daily. It's
join the official FrSKY Ethos Facebook group.
yeah. There's
That
well,
one,
there's also the GitHub, isn't there, where you can download the latest bits and pieces and then test and
yeah, you
comment
can
on them.
do
Yeah,
that. But typically, what happens when people have questions is that I mean, the Facebook group has about 6,000 members right now. So you ask a question, and I don't care if it's the middle of the night; it's the middle of the day for someone else. You ask a question, and within a couple hours, it's usually answered.
but yeah, there's a great family of people that's around asking,
Yeah,
and there's
it
plenty of
really
YouTubers that obviously are showing people how to do things, including myself. Or myself, it's normally how not what to do, so then at least you won't break anything. But yourself as well is that you're here for people, which I think is fantastic, and it just shows the quality of the company that you're working for.
thank you.
Free
We
Sky.
also have FrSKY Ben, and we have we have a lot of other people. Then we have a lot of people uh, who are behind the scenes, as far as people like Adam Moss. We have Leor, our team pilot. We have Juan Sanchez Garcia. A lot of people who are around. Who Mike Shellum, who's created a new script for the glider pilots that just came out recently for Ethos 1.5.6. And so, yeah, there's just the community is fantastic. And it's, I think that is the main thing is people want to help each other. So
Brilliant.
that
Someone's just
is,
quickly asked them if they want to get hold of you. What's the best way? They're asking for an email, but I mean, presumably the best way
you
to ask
can
is on
get a hold
Facebook,
of
isn't
me,
it?
Steve at FrSKY-RC.com.
There you go. So, do you want to just repeat that again for me because I was over talking?
FRSK, it's Steve at FrSKY -RC.com.
There you go. So, if you've got any questions, then email him, but don't spam email him. He gets a lot of emails. So, try and do a constructive email, as I like to say to people. Think about what you want to
Something
say
like that. We got to.
because
Yeah, the other thing the other thing I will say that we're coming up to events like Joe Null. Occasionally, I get people who bring their planes from like 3 states away. Like, I hear the FrSKY is going to be there. I'm bringing my plane, and they can help me sort it out. And I'm like, we can't go through the entire thing. We give you some ideas and as to what's going on, but to fix things if you're broken a switch, for example, in your transmitter, we set it in inexpensive to replace. We have a repair facility in Brea, California. Please don't bring it to events. We can't fix it there at the events. We don't have the tools or the expertise to do it right on the spot.
This is what I mean. This is what about the Facebook. If you don't use Facebook, then send emails. Everybody sends emails.
Right.
And don't just bring all your kit to a show and say, hey, can you fix this, or this is doing this and this is doing that? Because I think
general questions. A lot of this, though, I'm very clear with people when they get into Ethos is there's going to be a learning curve. And essentially what happened was first 6 months after selling the transmitters, I got the same questions over and over again. So I wrote a list of what the questions were, and I found answers to all the questions on videos. And it was one sheet of paper. And if you were go to, we should put in the show notes, it's bit.ly, bit.ly/FrSKY with a capital F and a capital S, and then capital VIDS, just capital for V for videos, VIDS. That is the list, and we'll put it in the show notes so that people can go to it. That's what I share with people, all the different videos, and they're from probably about 12 different guys who put them out there. A lot of times, if you like the way someone explains something, just follow them because they have a lot of other videos as well.
Yeah, I mean, to say I'll add some bits and pieces tomorrow. I mean, obviously, Steve can send me bits and pieces to add in the description afterwards. So, I mean, this video will be up. You know, just have to look in the live section, and it will be in there anyway. And I'm sure that I'll be doing future videos as well with FrSKY stuff, and I'll probably just whack that in there as well. But it's always good to all these questions are probably always answered, and Steve probably says them about 30 different times plus.
Right. People call me up and ask, "What's this about?" And then we answer it once, and hopefully, I do appreciate people sticking in there and watching. I can't believe how many people are still watching us right now as compared to when we first started. So
yeah,
it's great.
It's about 30 people at the moment, 29, 30 people, which is fantastic.
Which is great.
I hope that he was able to ask a question, or even maybe some of your answers or questions were answered, so to say, from Steve. And to say that for me, if you do Ethos and you've got the Ethos Suite, update it. Go to Ethos has got its own site that shows you the update. That's the proven update.
Yeah, there's a problem. It doesn't auto update, so you need to go in there and we should put a link to the Ethos 1.5.4, even though it's going to be only valid for a few weeks, and they'll be on to something else later on.
The best thing on the Ethos site, doesn't it? It tells you the latest anyway. So
this one didn't tell you the latest after 1.5.3 though. So
really? Okay.
Yeah, they moved it outside of Ethos, so now the Ethos Suite is its own thing outside of Ethos itself. So you go to the Ethos GitHub, you look for GitHub and Ethos, you'll find Ethos 1.5.6, and you look at there, you see all the assets. Ethos Suite's not in there. You go look down a little bit further, you'll see 1.5.4 Ethos Suite. That's where you download it at.
Okay, well, we can put a link to that as well later on. As I say, I'll be counting sheep soon because I'd have to get up tomorrow nice and early to earn some money to buy some more FrSKY stuff. But check it out in a couple of days or something, and I think what I'll probably do actually, because it's quite important, because I'm blown away by FrSKY stuff, is that and I'm not pushing out my website or anything like this, but that Dad's rchangar.co.uk. I'm going to put some FrSKY links on there for you, because obviously it's going to help out. If it's helping,
appreciate that.
That's fantastic. It's fantastic. Yeah. It's just that I'm just too lazy to update the site sometimes. I'm terrible. I really am. Maybe fun enough trying to fly, so not anything else. But anyway, Steve, listen, I'm going to go anyway before I turn into a pumpkin. Yeah. And I really appreciate. And maybe down the line you can come back on again. Come visit us in the hangar.
I'd love to. Yeah.
And you never know, you might have some more information. But we're definitely looking forward to that.
Sunday night, like drink fest, where we can pick out a couple of ales and we sit down and get the beers out, and
that'd be good. That'd be good.
Yeah,
we'll have to work on that one in the summer. There you go, David. David actually is the feedback. There you go, Dr. David in the house. What's up, FBB? He's put a little link there for feedback community releases.
Oh, good. That's the GitHub page. Thank you, David.
Yeah, thank you, David. There you go. So, but there's information out there that will answer your question. I know sometimes it is a bit scary. I mean, I had the same thing. I thought I'd broken my radio. I did go out there a little bit and speak on, and there wasn't a quick. I know what it's like for everyone. How can I say this just quickly before I go? I know what it's like for people. It's like, I need the answer now. I want it right now. And sometimes you don't get that. And I get that. So, by putting these bits of information out, we will help you, because if you've got the Ethos Suite, it will fix all your problems on your radio, unless obviously you've been throwing it against the brick
Right.
wall. Then it probably wouldn't.
The main thing is I want less of this in the future, where it just works and there's less. If I believe that the future of Ethos is going to be third-party applications run through Lua scripts. So you'll better believe I'll be pushing the developers to put Lua script installers in there, so people don't have to play with Lua script installation. It will be handled through Ethos Suite, because I want to see a lot more stuff added to the radio. So your favorite, more you having our stuff work with other stuff you might be working with, like, for example, great one, Aura 8 for Flex Innovation planes. Maybe not big in the UK, but they're huge in the United States.
Mm-hmm.
So something like that, where we can do something where you can do a bit more. You can do some fine tuning in your Aura 8 from your transmitter, that type of thing, and that would be done through a Lua script. There's a whole bunch of these neat things that you're going to see not too in the distant future, where you can have like tachometers in really nice colors on your screen, on your X20 and X18, where those are Lua scripts. And so hopefully it's kind of like what do they call it, the Play Store for Google and the Apple Store for Apple product. Same thing, where you can be able to go in and you can download third-party Lua scripts and easily install them onto your transmitter.
That'd be fantastic. That'd be, it's like a website, like a bit like your Play Store and anything else. You can look at it and go, oh wow, that does that, and then download it through the suite, and it's on your transmitter before you can say, oh wow. So I look forward to that. That's fun.
That's great.
Fun,
so a lot more fun stuff like that's popping up in the future. This year it's a bit of like transition into Ethos 1.5, but after this, then it's kind of it's game on. Everything's going to work. The stabilized receivers, which we didn't really talk about, those things are brilliant. I love those things. Not a stabilized receiver guy, but all of a sudden, man, fantastic. And then a lot of these videos I'm going to continue making are just going to be a little bit shorter, and they're going to be just on one specific topic and help people out. Like, for example, how do you set up the trainer? Put a video out as far as that's concerned, and things like that. Little things where people,
we appreciate your time, Steve. I mean, that'd be good if you can do those sort of things, because it's always great. People want to know stuff and how to join stuff and how to do this and do that. And if you've got a one-stop shop, it's brilliant. Obviously, there's a lot of it going about.
And then you can also share your stuff too. Make videos, and if you don't need any special license. Just start. If you have something to say and you got a constructive way of putting it together. The only thing I will ask you to do is if you make a video, you might want to record it 2 or 3 times, because the first time you might end up rambling or forgetting stuff. You might need to come up with a little script, but try to keep it concise, and then record it a few times, and by the 3rd time, it's usually good to go.
Yeah, don't do it like me. I talk too much and ramble. It's all good. It's all good. Right. Listen, Steve, I've got to get out of here, mate, before I go. Right. But listen, we'll speak soon anyway, and I'm sure that we could give him another round of applause. He's been a hero tonight. He's spent 2 hours out of his day to come speak to us. So, listen, back on the Friday feeding this weekend. So look out for that one. It's a fun one. But until then, be safe, keep safe, but most of all, have that RC fun. And thanks for popping by.
Thank you.